Hello, everybody out there. We are live and waiting for you all to manifest on Facebook. So right now, people are not there. I wait with the introduction, Robert, until people have found us, because it always takes a bit of time.
Talk to people who are there. Yeah.
Exactly. So we look a bit mad if we keep
Well,
talking.
what happens if some people don't speak English, or is there?
Well, what we do is that the people, basically most people speak English who watch this, because I tell them it's going to be in English. And then we have somebody in our association who translates.
Right.
And she translates it, though, in writing for our magazine, the Tarot Heute, which comes out every 3-4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And she is, well, doing a really good job. So I'm sure she will go and translate yours as well. But as yet, nobody. There's the first person appearing. Hello out there. Can you please leave us a short comment whether you can see us, hear us, so we can get started? That would be excellent. The number we see for people watching doesn't really work as well, because it's always more people watching than numbers showing up. But now people are coming and seeing us. So I can start my introduction. I'm here with Robert M. Place. Hello, Robert.
Hi.
I'm very happy that you decided to come again. After we had a chat in December and everything broke down. 2 weeks ago, we had problems with going live. And today, again, we had some technical issues. But this is probably because I'm sitting in Hamburg and you somewhere near New York. And it's a long distance call, basically.
I'm right near the Hudson River, 100 miles north of New York City.
Wow. Okay, so the Hudson River is a problem. It's making interruptions. Anyway, so people can see us, hear us, and are watching. Great. Robert, we talked, or you basically talked, because you have so much to say about tarot and alchemy, and it was very interesting. People have come back to me and asked me when I could continue with you, because they were so interested. And we managed to talk. We managed to discuss the first 5 numbers in tarot regarding alchemy and tarot. And at the number 6, everything broke down. So I will just put the screen back to work. Okay. And you have here the number 6. And I was actually, when the talk went down in December, I was going to ask you why you had 2 lover cards there.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And they're really interesting, an interesting interpretation of the lovers as well. So perhaps we can start with this.
Well, okay. Well, actually, as you remember, the first 5 cards had to do with we were introduced to the prima materia, which is the substance of the great work of alchemy, and then the 4 temporal rulers represented a breakdown of that material into the 4 elements, and now now it's time to recombine things. So it's sort of good that we broke down right then, because that was a breaking point in the alchemical process. So I think it was an alchemical accident. You see,
you did it on purpose, alchemically.
Yeah. How can I actually put my glasses on? So
okay, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now so what happens now is that the lovers represents the first, which is called the minor conjunction in alchemy, where the red king and the white king are brought together, so we can recombine the material and start putting it through processes. So usually in alchemy, you'll see, like, you see these pictures, like this is from the Rosarium Philosophorum, and from the Anatomy of Gold here, and you see they're very sexy when they come together. Minor conjunction. So this card was the first one I designed, and see, originally, this is back in 19. I think I was working on this probably in 1993 or 1994, and my publisher was Thorson's in London, which was a branch of HarperCollins, and I showed them this picture, and they said, "Well, we don't want to publish that; it's too sexy." So we're afraid the stores won't take it. So, I okay, well, so I redesigned it this way, so it's sort of like this is sort of like the preliminary introduction of the red king and the white queen, and then this is the actual conjunction. So this is the one that was published in the first edition. Now, what happened is the deck became really popular, and I decided to get the rights back and publish it myself. And then when I published it myself, so the second edition, which is the first one that I published, I decided to keep both versions of the Lovers cards in there because I had designed two different versions. And I thought this one was more accurate to Alchemy anyway. And and they serve a function because, you see, this is like the preliminary and this is the action. So I like, when I use the deck, I like to use both cards. Some people prefer to use one or the other. If you're worried about, offending your clients with this image, and you can just put this image in your deck, or if you're doing it for yourself, you can put this one in, or you can use both of them. I use both of them, and I find it really useful because this kind of sexual imagery is really a good metaphor for lots of activities. Like, how like people say in business, people are in bed together, or they're being introduced, but it's it might lead to something, or like when there's a new president, we say he has a honeymoon period. I mean, we use these sexual references all the time in everyday activities and business transactions. So I find them very useful. Anyway, so in the conjunction, the king and queen are joined, and you see the sun and the moon are in the backdrop.
Yeah. Okay.
Now you'll see the earliest. See, I'm not showing the earliest cards here from Italy. The earliest card I have here is the French card from the Tarot of Marseille. And in the Tarot of Marseille, you see the lover has to make a choice between two women. And one has a laurel wreath representing virtue, and the other one has flowers representing sensuality. And of course, that's a classical predicament where you have to make a choice between your what Plato would call the soul of appetite or of the body, and the soul of will, which is the mind. And of course, the lover has to pick the woman with the laurel wreath for the story to continue, and he becomes the hero in the chariot. Now, the earliest cards really showed a marriage ceremony. Like if you go to the Visconti Sforza deck, or like the early Italian decks, you'll see that it's really a marriage ceremony, and like Cupid is above it, and there's a man and a woman offering their hand to each other. So it's not, or it's more like a betrothal portrait,
or like the Crawley deck.
Yeah, and that's what the Waite Smith deck picks up on. Like you see how this one was definitely influenced by Waite's ideas, because we see in other decks that he had influence on, he always wants it to be Adam and Eve. So Cupid has become this angel, like whether it's Raziel or Ariel, there's different interpretations. And then we see there's Adam and Eve, and there's two trees. There's the tree of knowledge, and the tree of life, and which are the trees that were in Eden. So he's putting this other allegory into it. But there's still this alchemical idea of combining the opposites, which leads to the next cards.
And can I just ask, because there is the snake in Waite's tarot, and if I look at this image in the middle between yours and Waite's, it's kind of snaky as well, how they are combined. So is the snake also an important element in the alchemical process?
Snakes are a symbol of Hermes, for one thing. Well, it's interesting because the snake in the Garden of Eden tempts Eve to eat of the tree of knowledge. Now, Gnostics, that's usually like, oh, the terrible Eve, she caused us to sin, and that's why we're doomed to struggle and die, and like threw us out of paradise. But the thing is, the Gnostics looked at it like, why did God not want us to have knowledge? And so the snake becomes sort of like a hero figure, like see how like in alchemy, the snake is like poisonous, but also the healing elixir in the end, and he has to be transformed. That's like Hermes, like the trickster. So the snake is sort of a trickster in the Adam and Eve story, and he's causing us to have knowledge. And then in the story of Eden, God says, wow, if they now that they have knowledge, they might eat from the tree of life, and then they'll be like gods like us. So Gnostics would say, well, why didn't God want us to eat of the tree of life and be like gods, and so that becomes the whole Gnostic and Hermetic and mystical quest, is like, how do we find the tree of life and find immortality? And so, like in the Kabbalah, that's the diagram of the tree of life is based on the story of Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what alchemy is really about, because it's based on Hermeticism.
Yeah. So Marianne just mentioned that on your card, she think it's quite interesting how the moon of the White Queen lies on the ground, just like she's lying on the ground at the card on the right. So that there's a focus on the moon being on the ground.
Well, because the moon's, I'm relating it to the queen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So see here, because she's on the left, I put the moon on the left with her. Now, the thing is, they're in a water bath, but I decided to put them in a sand bath, because there's two different ways to do it. The sand bath is the dry technique, and the water bath is the wet technique, So, I mean, it's just arbitrary.
So I have images in my head now.
But they're sort of meta. See, they become metaphors for chemical processes.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously. Okay, so now let's look at some of the other decks I designed. Now, see, next, so this is our the original Lovers card, right? Now, if we look at my latest one, where I was talking about this, where I'm using the imagery from the Tarot of Marseille. Remember, let's go back a second. See, remember the lover has to pick between the two women.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back. So now, see, this is my interpretation of that. So you see the woman with the laurel wreath and the flowers, and of course, in my style, because it's more realistic, it's easier to see what's happening. But see, what I'm doing here is I'm showing how this is also based on Hermetic philosophy, which is the underlying philosophy that alchemy is based on. But the tarot was not intended to be an alchemical text. It's intended to express Hermetic philosophy. So that's why it coincides with alchemy.
Yeah.
So here I'm trying to go back to the French deck and show how it's very close to, the Hermetic statements. Like it says here, we have the power to choose, for it is our power to choose the better, and likewise to choose the worse. See, so in other words, like, it's your choice what you choose in your life and how your soul progresses. So now you see, I told you like this. So the lover has to choose the right one and becomes the chariot. And you see how the charioteer is the same lover, only with a crown on his head now when he's in the chariot.
He took the laurel.
Yeah. He obviously he had to. Okay. Now this is my more simplified. This is the alchemical magnum opus deck, where it's sort of like distilling it down to the essence. So here I have them in. I'm showing that they're actually in the vessel, and the two lovers coming together, and see how the red king and the white queen. See, she has white hair and he has red hair. Yeah. Because I have subdued. Even the colors are distilled. It's down to like just basic red and blue.
I really like your distilled images. It's brilliant. Very, very good.
Well, like I was saying last time, is the thing when I did this deck, I have been designing the Lenormand and Oracle decks, and I realized that I like the way there's like a simple iconic image on the Lenormand decks. That it simplifies the cards, and when you're using for divination, because you're sort of focusing on the image. It centers you on a limited image and meanings. So I thought, well, I could do that with alchemy the same way. And then one of my students is a printer, and she prints like she uses what we call letterpress, which is because basically the original decks were woodcuts, where you would take a chisel and you cut, and like all these black lines would be the raised part of the wood, and you cut away everything that wasn't a black line. Then you'd make another plate for the red, another one for the blue, another one for the white. So, but she does that through a chemical process that makes the raised areas, and then she prints the same way, just like a woodblock print. So I was thinking, well, I could design this deck and then have her print it. And then when I found out how much it would cost, and to do, and what I would have to sell to my customers, I realized it was not practical. So I decided, well, I'll just print the deck the regular way, but it's designed like a woodcut deck. You see?
Yeah. So sublimation, does mean what in this context?
Okay, no, sublimation is okay. This is the first alchemical process. So we might look at the charioteer in this case as instead of like in our original Marseille deck, he's actually the lover, right? But here he's more like the product of the lovers, like the child of the lovers. That's why he's youthful. Okay, now sublimation is the first alchemical process that it's put through. It's and it's a it's still a term used by chemists today. Sublimation is something where the material jumps from the basic state to the final state. So the thing is, the four elements of the way they're interpreted by chemists today represent the states of matter. So like earth would be solid, water would be liquid, and gas would be air, and then fire would be the energy that drives the process. Because the more heat you apply to it, the faster the molecules move, and then they move from solid to air, right? Okay, now in sublimation, a solid moves right to air. It bypasses liquid. It's sort of impetuous.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so it's impatient. It just it's a solid and it says, I don't want to be liquid. I just want to be air. So so the charioteer. See, alchemists would use the myth of Phaeton, who was the Phaeton, according to the Greek myth, was the son of the sun god Helios, and but his mother was mortal. So people didn't. So he wanted people to realize that he was the son of a god. So he went. And he went up to the temple of Helios and he asked for a favor, and he had his father swear on the fates that he would grant him his wish. So his father swore, and then he said he wished to drive the solar chariot. And of course, his father realized that was a big mistake, but he already swore that and couldn't take it back. So he let Phaeton ride the solar chariot, but he was too young to control the horses. And so he lost control of the sun, and the sun scorched northern Africa and turned it into a desert. And you probably know the Sahara. That's how it happened. And anyway, Zeus had to strike him down with a thunderbolt and knock him out of the chariot to save the world. So so that's it. So this is image of like the charioteer being impatient and jumping ahead to the final product when he's not ready and not going through the stages. So here we see in the charioteer, we see how the chariot really has three parts, and these are related to the three essences, alchemical essences, which are you see we have Mercury right here. Mercury. Can you see my cursor?
No, but
Mercury's on the bottom, under the
yeah, I can see the symbols on the card.
And the red horse has sulfur. That's the triangle with the cross, and then the white horse has salt. So these represent the three parts of the essences. Like besides the four elements, these three essences exist in all matter, and the three essences go back to Platonic philosophy and Hermetic philosophy, where they felt there were three parts of the soul. Plato would explain it as there's the soul of appetite, the soul of will, and the soul of reason. So the soul of appetite would be the body, which would be salt. The soul of will, which would be the mind, would be the sulfur, and then the soul of reason would be Mercury. Although some alchemists might change those two. Mm-hmm. And so the charioteer would represent the soul of reason. So like this, it sounds a little odd to us, but really he's just talking about body, mind, and spirit, or soul. So and that's basic to all New Age philosophy. And that comes from Plato, and that was based on Egyptian philosophy in the first place, and Pythagoras, and we can trace it back through all the philosophical traditions and back to Egyptian mysticism, and it's part of Hermeticism. So the three essences that the alchemists discovered, we really represent, that's their chemical analysis of the three parts of the soul. In other words, the essences are the soul of matter, and this matter has these three parts. So the idea is that these things have to be pulled together. You can see the soul of reason has to take control of the soul, the body, and the mind, mm-hmm, the soul, mm-hmm, the spirit, and then to get to the goal. And then we see there's a vision of the goal, like the internal sunrise, and then we see the three essences are in their places around the internal sunrise. That's the big wheel in the sky. So now you see in my more simplified version, I'm just showing the chariot with the three essences, and then on the Marseille version, I was looking at the Marseille card and I started realizing how, okay, so we have the two horses and the charioteer, and then he always has these four pillars. So the chariot really becomes, the four pillars represent the four elements. And see that symbol in the center is the symbol of sublimation. So and the number is 7, which is 4 and 3 combined. So we have we have the physical body, which is the four elements, and then the three essences, which are the soul, the triple soul, and then the 3 and the 4 come together. So the 3 represents the soul, and the 4 represents the body. And you see here in the Hermetic statement, it says, "Man is mortal by reason of his body. He is immortal by reason of the man of eternal substance, which is the soul." So see, it explains the image in the Marseille deck very well and shows how hermetic it is. Mm-hmm. And then these would just become, I take off from that and show how that relates to alchemy.
Yeah, I can understand.
Okay, so that's here's our chariot again. So you can see here's the Marseille card. Here's the Wade Smith version. Here's a chariot of the sun in an alchemical text, and you can see how the wheels here are related to the four elements. Those are symbols for the four elements below, and then the chariot is being driven by 3 eagles, and the eagles are the 3 essences. So it's the same kind of symbolism.
I really like to see the chariot from the back. It's a new perspective.
Well, that's interesting too. See, when I first did that when it first came out, it's funny because some people got really upset with me. Okay, turned the chariot around. But see, what the thing is, I did this type of meditation where I would sit and contemplate each card, and then close my eyes and visualize the card as a doorway. I would visualize it like as if it was painted on a doorway. And in my mind, I would open up that door and then walk through it, and then that would lead me into this aspect of my psyche that related to that archetype on the card, and then I have an experience. So when I did that with the chariot card, it was a really startling experience. It was one of the best experiences I had in the whole series of meditations, even though I did all the trumps and the fool. What happened is the chariot came to me with this youthful charioteer, and it turned around and invited me to get on the chariot. And then I got on the chariot, and the chariot just went really fast and went off the ground and up into the sky. And we went to the sacred center of the world, and we were in the center of this huge wheel, and above us was the internal sunrise shining on us, and all around the wheel, on the edge of the wheel, were mountains and valleys, and each one had a sunrise and a sunset. And of course, that's that thing I stylized around the wheel. You see how it's like green, like a curving green line that looks like the landscape, and then there's little yellow dots which represent the sun. So that's the physical sun of the year, like the wheel is the wheel of the year, and then that's all the suns is coming up and down. But the internal sun is that true essence that's brighter than the sun.
Yeah, I really like this perspective, and that we can see the goal of the chariot here. I have never seen something like this. Really interesting. Reminds me a bit of Stargate. Yeah.
Stargate. Okay. So the thing was that, and see, that idea. It's also like, as I read Plato later and read about the Phaedrus, where he talks about how the soul has 3 parts, and how he says that they exist as a chariot on this other plane, and how we have the dark horse and the light horse and the charioteer, and how in the beginning of time all the chariots went up. They followed in this big procession of the chariots of the gods, and they went up to heaven, and they went to the heaven above heaven, where they saw this pure essence of virtue, which is the true light of the true inner sun, and they soak in the true light of virtue, which is the true food of the soul. That's the real nectar and ambrosia that brings immortality. So, but what happened is, because the charioteer couldn't control, all our charioteers couldn't control their horses, because the soul of appetite and the soul of will start fighting with each other. The soul of appetite says, "I'm hungry, I want to do something else," and the soul of will says, "You always bring me down," and gets really angry at them, and they break each, and see, they have wings, right? But they start fighting, they break their wings, and then the chariot it falls down, 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 through the ladder of the planets down into Earth in the sublunar realm, and it gets encased in a body made of the 4 elements. So see how the whole image, the alchemical image, and the image of my vision was totally in harmony with Plato's myth, even though I hadn't read it yet. So this was so strong, I had to illustrate it because it was such a strong personal thing to me.
Yeah, it's really great. I love it. So he kind of falls down, and you said he lands on the ground. So does the number 8, which follows, have to do with this ground?
The ground?
Well, you said he created the Sahara, the desert.
Oh yeah. Well, in the myth, yeah. In the myth, he ended up. I forgot when he ended up in a river somewhere.
Okay.
I forgot which river it was. See, I should have written this down. That I would have. Listen, I don't have any of that in my writing here.
It's okay.
It's add to my notes, so in case people ask me that again. Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Yeah.
We're never going to get this done. We'll have to come back.
No, it doesn't matter, because something I wanted to say, to tell to people out there. I don't know how you find Robert's deck, but or how you like it, but I think it's really fantastic. I really would like to have it shipped over to Germany, but the shipping costs are very expensive. So if anybody,
you can buy them from Watkins Books in London, and then shipping wouldn't be as much.
Well, Brexit, Europe, shipping.
It's not going to raise the shipping costs.
It's not easy now.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with people. What is it that keeps things together?
Totally. Now, what I wanted to say is, if we can get a few people together, up to 10 people or so, we can get reduced postage. So
because we're going to ship it in one box.
Exactly. So anybody who's interested in getting these decks as well, please let me know. Just send me a message through the messenger, and I will organize this, because they're really fantastic. And don't worry that we can't finish today, Robert. It's more about that people have an impression, and then can continue by, for example, buying your book, which is this is the book I'm rereading again. And there's lots of stuff in it, which is really interesting when you look at alchemy as well. So let's talk about number 8, please.
Okay, so we got to 8 finally. Okay. Okay, so the thing is, this is called disposition, the alchemical process, which basically means these are all just different alchemical processes that are still used by chemists today. And it means, disposition means that you're weighing out all the materials before you put it in your vessel. And so we see, so in my image, you see how justice is weighing fire and water, which are opposites. And then that symbol above her in red is the symbol of disposition, which you see looks like scales. And then look at here. Here's an image from the golden tripod from 1618, and it shows here we see this. The image of disposition is shown as a figure of justice with the sword and the scales, and you see how in the center of her circle there, it says aqua, which is water, but it's in a upward triangle, which is the symbol for fire. So see, it's like this combining fire and water, and that's called the salt of the philosophers, which is one of the secret ingredients that is transformative in the alchemical process. Okay, so now if we look at the traditional cards, like even going back to the Italian decks, they're pretty consistent. It's always just justice with her sword and scales, and like if we go to a courthouse today, we'll see the same figure, except that usually today that she has a blindfold, because the blindfold is supposed to mean that she's impartial. But the thing is, in the Renaissance, a blindfold was considered a negative symbol. Blindfold meant not that you were impartial, but that you were ignorant or just didn't care. So, so the thing, and the scales already mean that she's impartial, because she wants to, she's looking for the absolute truth. You don't put your finger on the scale. You want an accurate measurement. So she basically, she could be a symbol of truth or science or many different things. But now in my image, you see, besides weighing fire, and water. Her sword has a double serpent, which is like related to the caduceus, on the hilt of the sword. And then the symbol at the base under the handle there is the symbol. It's a glyph that means vitriol, which is the secret fire. So she had, in one hand she has the secret fire, and the other hand she has the scale balancing opposites, and then you see her body itself becomes like an oven. You see how like the fire comes out of her crown, and then that goes up. Now, after I did this, I was thinking how that was really curious why I put the columns there, because I was sort of working unconsciously and intuitively. I looked at some Renaissance figures that I thought, where I got the I borrowed the drapery from some Renaissance drawings, and I put her arm out and put the scales there and put the other arm with the sword, and then I wanted a background with the columns, and then the only way I could compose it is that they coincided totally with her hands. And at first I was wondering if that was awkward. Then I looked back and I said, no, it really works, especially with the landscape inviting us in between them.
Yeah.
Okay, but then I said, well, why are those two columns there? And then it dawned on me that it's very similar to the Kabbalistic Tree of Life design, where you have three columns. You see, so the center column is the one that goes up to God, like Ein Sof, and so that's why we have the eye and the fire, like in seeing the column of smoke keeps going up, right? And then the column with the sword is the column of mercy, and the column with the scales is the column of severity. Now, some people might think, well, shouldn't severity be the sword? But when I thought about that, it started to give me new meaning for the card, because I thought, okay, so severity means that you have to be impartial and not, you want to use the scales and be totally impartial and find the truth, and you have to be severe about that, not allow any emotions to sway you, but you want an accurate reading. But with the sword represents punishment, and that's when mercy comes in. Because the thing is, okay, so once we find out the truth, but with punishment, we have to be careful not to be vengeful, and we have to use punishment tempered with mercy. So the whole thing started to make sense, and I thought, gee, that's really what justice means. So the picture actually taught me things about justice.
And I really like the way, again, you perceived this. I like that these images spring from your meditations. It's really interesting what comes up there. So the weight card obviously is number 11, and there are reasons for that.
Right. Yes. Okay. So the thing is, now you'll see, the Marseille deck, it's number 8, right? And I'm going with the Marseille order, which makes more sense to me in the alchemical process and the Hermetic process. Now, the Wade Smith deck both Wade and Smith were members of the Golden Dawn, and the Golden Dawn, they worked at they were influenced by Eliphas Levi and another occultist, and that they want to associate the tarot trumps, which we call the major arcana, which are really traditionally called trumps. They want to associate them with the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, technically, the Fool isn't a trump. There's only 21 trumps, and there's a Fool, which is a wild card in the game. But the occultists, starting with Court of Jebelon, started theorizing that these 22 cards were a unit, and that there might be a connection with the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, because there happens to be 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. But the only real connection is that there just happens to be 22 cards and 22 letters. There's 22 chapters in Revelation too, and some people try to make something out of that. But none of these. The only thing all these things have in common is they happen to have 22 parts. So now Levy decided that he was, the way he'd work it out is the first letter would be assigned to the magician card, and then he'd go through to the world would be the final one, Toa, and then he placed the Fool between the judgment and the world, so that it was the next to last card. Now, when the Golden Dawn took on the idea, they started with the Fool. So Aleph, the first letter, was assigned to the Fool, and then the only card with the same letter would be Toa, would be the world. But all the other ones have different, end up totally different, because we started one in a different place. Now in the Kabbalah, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet are they have number meanings, and they also are associated with signs of the zodiac and planets and elemental symbols, and they're also assigned to parts of the body. So there's this whole magical correspondence system between them. And so what Levy was doing is saying, if we add the Hebrew letters to the trumps, now the trumps can function the same way in the Kabbalah, and they have these same astrological associations. So that's where the astrological associations come from. Now in the Golden Dawn system, number 8 coincided with the zodiac sign Leo, which is the lion, and number 11 corresponded with Libra, which is the scales. So they said, well, that must be the real order. So they switched the place of strength, who has a lion, and justice, who has scales, to make it coincide better with the astrological symbols. Now, but the funny thing is, the moon, the moons ended up being associated with the high priestess, which is the would be the third card in their system, and that would be Gamel, and so but there's already a moon card. There's a moon card in the trumps, but the moon ends up being associated with Pisces, and the moon's associated with the high priestess, and they didn't think they should switch those around. So but the sun card ended up being associated with the sun, which worked out nice. But they didn't seem to be worried about the moon card. So it's just sort of arbitrary.
It just shows that these systems are arbitrarily, basically. It's not.
Yeah, there isn't any. It's just some arbitrary thing people worked out, and it doesn't. And there's all kinds of theorizing about it. But the thing that bothered me about that system, not that, like you can see how I made use of the Kabbalah with this image myself.
Yeah. And
of course the Kabbalah is based on Hermetic philosophy and symbolism itself. It's just a Jewish interpretation of these things.
Yeah.
But this idea of just taking the Hebrew letters and force fitting them to the cards, that's not the way to do it.
I agree.
So they're force fit because those letters have nothing to do with these images, and so it makes a lot of confusion. So it makes it like, oh, you're not actually supposed to look at the images; they're really a secret code, and you got to learn the secret code and memorize the secret code. And then, so why did you even need the cards?
True. Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't have any influence really whether this card is an 11 or an 8 in the alchemical process. It should be at after 7, basically.
Well, it could move. I mean, these different alchemists would arrange these processes in different ways. So it doesn't have to be right here. You see, that's one of the things I like about alchemy is that every alchemist worked. Not only did they work from other alchemical texts and do experiments, but they paid attention to their dreams and visions. And so each. And then they wrote all their texts in symbolic language, and so one alchemist to another, they often contradict each other, because it's not something that's so prosaic that it has to be the same. It's very fluid and symbolic and poetic. So and in a lot of ways, alchemy isn't just, we think about alchemy as the precursor of modern physics and science and chemistry and things like that, and medicine. But it's also a precursor of art, of a lot of modern art. And see, like what happened is after Paracelsus, who is considered the father of modern medicine, he instead of looking to create this one magic elixir, which is the great work, he felt that alchemy was better suited to creating individual medicines for individual problems. So after him, people started doing that more, and then that's how alchemy sort of transformed into modern medicine and chemistry. But then the philosophical aspect was still there, and a lot of people started paying more attention to the philosophical aspect, and then didn't even bother with the chemical experiments anymore. They just thought, well, no, it's a philosophical system. So that's what led to like the Rosicrucians and the inclusion of alchemy with the Freemasons, and then we find people like in Germany who Meyer and other people made these beautiful alchemical texts where they had beautiful engravings, like Atalanta Fugians is this alchemical text that was made in the 1600s in Germany, and it has these beautiful engravings, and then each one has like a poetic statement with it, and then there's a music piece that fits with. So it's you know, it's a multidisciplined work of art.
So what was the alchemist you just mentioned, the German one, Meyer?
Yeah, Michael Meyer. And then what happened is people like him and Jacob Bohm were really influential on the early Romantic artists. So, like, you know, so Romanticism started in Germany. I'm sure like all your audience going to love this because you have a lot of German people listening.
I know about this, yeah.
Okay, so the thing is, so Romanticism started in Germany, and the early Romantic artists were heavily influenced by these philosophical alchemical texts, and we're incorporating this into their artwork, right? Because they were looking for things. See, this is the age of enlightenment, where science is taking over and logic is taking over, but the artists are rebelling against it and looking for things that are, you know, what came before this logic. So they started looking to alchemy, and they were very interested in, okay, well, this is great because these alchemists are working just philosophically, and they were creating works of art. So then they started interpreting that, and then that, of course, spread, you know, to France and England, and then we have the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, which is based on I think it was the Nazarenes was a German movement that influenced them, yeah. And see, the Pre-Raphaelites meant they were looking for this purity of artistic expression that had a magical and transformative quality before the age of Raphael, because Raphael was everything, and all the artists were imitating Raphael. So it got to be, although Raphael is a great artist, now we're just seeing Raphael knockoffs all over the place. So so they were trying to get to something pure before Raphael, and they sort of rediscovered Botticelli and made Botticelli famous. Like, Botticelli was sort of forgotten until the Pre-Raphaelites rediscovered him. And then you know, and then you start, and then you see, when you look at Botticelli and then Michelangelo and all the earlier Renaissance paintings, you see these works were heavily influenced by Hermeticism.
And so, this is the time when the tarot comes around as well.
And of course, they created this atmosphere in England, and then so, like, what happens by, you know, the 1880s, there's this atmosphere where people, you know, this very romantic atmosphere where people were looking for something beyond science and logic and something more magical and mystical, and so we have Yeats, the poet, who's writing all this fantastic poetry, and we have you know, writers writing Ivanhoe and all these things going back to the Middle Ages, and then so the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood is founded, and they brought Eliphas Levi over, you know, to instruct them, and they started reading all the French texts and translating them, and Waite translated Levi, and he translated all, like, alchemical texts all into English. So there's this big influence on like, English artists were heavily influenced by like French occultists and German romantics.
Interesting, yeah.
In fact, even in, you know, the United States, our whole art movement, like the first great writer was Washington Irving, who, you know, right here, like, I happen to be in where I live in Saugerties is probably the place that Washington Irving visualized as the place where Rip Van Winkle lived, and he was heavily influenced by German romantics, and, you know, Dutch, and there's a lot of Dutch settlers here, and so he was sort of equating these Dutch legends and traditional mysticism with, like, German romanticism, and that's the basis of American art, you know.
I must confess, I'm not very good with American art.
Well, well, everything started in New York.
Of course.
Okay, so the thing is, Washington Irving lived in New York City, and he used to go up the Hudson River, right where I live, and then he started, and there were all these Dutch settlers here because it was really originally a Dutch colony. You know, New York was New Amsterdam at first. So the thing is, so he started writing these stories about the Dutch settlers and writing all these fantastic stories about the Headless Horseman and Rip Van Winkle, and he became the first famous writer in the United States. And then other artists moved up from New York City, and they looked at the beautiful landscapes, and they developed this whole style of painting based on very realistic landscape painting. It was called the Hudson River School, and then it became world famous. So that's all the first great American artists. They all from the Hudson River. And that's
Okay,
so that's what's behind my. So okay, that brings us back to the justice. That's what the Hudson River behind it.
Transgressed a bit here, but very interesting. No, but what I really wanted to point out is then when you talked about Botticelli and Michelangelo, that this is the time when the tarot first has its
the 1400s is when the tarot developed.
Yes.
So you know, the thing is, like also, well, it was evolving in Italy over the 1400s. So the earliest evidence is like around 1420, when the regular deck of cards, which already existed in the 1300s, they added trumps to it, which are you know, the fifth suit, what you call the major arcana now. Now, at first there were different sets of trumps, and then some. The latest evidence suggests that in Florence is where they standardized the trumps to the series we're familiar with now. And then and what happened is there were different orders of the trumps, but there were basically groups of figures were grouped very similarly, but some might switch position. Like in some orders, like Justice would be the last card, and World would be the next to last card, or the Hermit would come after the Wheel of Fortune instead of before it. You see. Now what happened? So the different city-states, you know, Italy wasn't one place; it was all these different city-states. So Milan, the order that ended up in Milan, is the one that then was transferred to France, because basically in 1499, the King of France, Charles XII, I believe it was, conquered Milan and made it part of France. So so there's a great cultural exchange going on, and that's what it seems mostly when the tarot influenced the French, and so basically they adopted the Milanese order of the trumps in the Milanese style. And then we can see, like some fragments of tarot cards we found in the walls of Sforza Castle, we can see how they're very similar to the Tarot of Marseille images.
In Warsaw, okay, I don't know about this either. I really have to do my tarot history. I have to read this.
Okay.
Amazing. Coming to speak of this, if you go to Robert's webpage, I just put the link in the comments section. He publishes every month. You publish every month. It's kind of a newsletter with loads of interesting stuff about history.
My blog, my blog is supposed to be every 3 months.
Oh, okay. Because
when the pandemic happened, I sort of like was on a hiatus for a while.
I see. Well, that's good for us, right? Anyway, shall we just have one more card to go?
Go. Oh, well, let's here. Okay, now, so you see here. So here we have. This is the Tarot of Marseille version here, and it's a we have. It says here, when hatred and desire have agreed together and formed a habit of will, that is well balanced justice comes into being. So the thing is, what it's basically saying is that, you know, we have these, you know, we have things, we have love and hate, we have, you know, hate and desire, right? And that drives us back and forth. But justice is supposed to let those things go. So we need this will, which is the higher self. We need, you know, the higher self, like what Plato called the soul of reason, has to step in, because you know, basically the soul of appetite is the soul of desire, and the soul of will is where hate comes in, because it's like it's identify things you don't like and making value judgments. Okay, so now those two souls have to be balanced by the soul, the higher soul of reason, which is you know, the habit of will, as it says here, and then that's how justice is formed. So justice is a way of, it's sort of a process that allows us to keep becoming our higher self. You see, and now, okay, now this is, you know, my disposition again here, and then we see how the scales and the sword are all become one thing, and what the caduceus, and how it's that's the alchemical process. It's like, in other words, we have to keep moving ahead. We have to have desire. We don't lose desire, but we have to keep balancing that out and looking for truth. And then speaking of that leads us to the hermit who's looking for truth. So I don't know. Do you want me to go into the hermit more or not?
Yes, 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 yes. Because I also would like to know, is the hermit related to the Hermetic tradition?
No.
It's not the same.
Not the same, because the Hermetic tradition is derived from the name Hermes, and hermit comes from a different root word.
I just thought because the hermit.
People think that. Like, people have actually said it in some books I've read, but it's not true.
I just thought because the hermit is linked to Virgo, which is mercurial as well, that there might be a connection. But the
word hermit does not come from Hermes.
Okay, so as I said, I'm not so good with alchemy. So what does what is the stage of the hermit in alchemy?
Okay, so this is exaltation or exaltation. See, I was sort of like, usually they spell exaltation EXAL TATION. And then sometimes I sort of thought I saw it with a U, and they're related words, but exaltation it's more, see, to be exaltation means like something lifts you up, where exaltation is you lift yourself up, which is a subtle difference. So I sort of like that, but now I'm looking at, as I look more and more in alchemical text, they usually spell it with an A. So now I'm not sure if that was the best way to do it. But anyway, that's this variation I came up with. But that's his process. And exaltation means where the basic alchemically, it means that the substance was entered into itself to become a higher form of itself, which becomes a metaphor for meditation, and meditation. See, originally, the hermit was a symbol of time, because like if we go to the Italian decks, it's really he doesn't have a lantern; he has an hourglass, and he's a hunchback, and he represents old age and time. And then in Hermetic and Neoplatonic philosophy, the time was Saturn. The astrological sign Saturn was revamped to become a sign, something more positive, because originally it was like, oh, it meant old age and decrepitude. And then so Ficino, who had prominent Saturn in his chart, decided he was an astrologer himself, and the most prominent Neoplatonist in Renaissance Italy. So he started crafting this image that was more positive of Saturn, which of course becomes a hermit, so that Saturn represents time, and with time comes wisdom. And so the hermit is searching for wisdom. And of course, that story itself comes back to the story of Diogenes, the Greek philosopher who was a cynic, and supposedly lived in a barrel and like shunned everything worldly. And he'd walk through the marketplace with a lantern in broad daylight, and people asking him what he's doing, he'd say he's searching for an honest man, or searching for virtue or justice. People interpret it differently, but you see how he's searching for justice.
Diogenes, isn't it Diogenes?
What? Diogenes.
Diogenes, yeah.
Diogenes. Okay, so now you see, now if we look at the hermit here in the French one here, says, okay, for the incorporeal is not a thing perceptible by touch or sight. So the thing is, that's exactly what the alchemical image is showing us. You see how in the alchemical images, you see how the hermit's following the footsteps of the soul of the world, the anima mundi. So, okay, let's look here. So you see, like in the full alchemical images, you see here's from Atalanta Fugians, and you see here's the anima mundi, it's usually shown as a woman who represents, like, she's the soul of the world. But notice everything is alive in alchemy. The earth is alive, rocks are alive, plants are alive, people are alive, animals are alive, everybody's alive, planets are alive. Okay, and anything that's alive, the reason it's alive is it has soul, so therefore the world has a soul. But the thing is, you can't see it. But the thing is, the philosopher's stone is made out of this soul. So so the whole point of alchemy is that the alchemist has to find the anima mundi if he's going to make the philosopher's stone. But you can't see her, so how do you find her? So you have to look for the evidence she leaves. In other words, so the alchemist has to be very perceptive and see the unseen by the evidence that she leaves. So hence he's following the footsteps of the anima mundi, and that's what I'm showing here. He's following the footsteps of the anima mundi, although I didn't show her.
Okay. And
now, see, this picture is a picture of Diogenes.
mm-hmm.
He lives in the barrel, you see, and then we see other images of hermits like that. Now, and here's our hermit from the French that can see how to retain the idea of he's a hunchback. So it's still like old age, but he's got the lantern like Diogenes.
And in the way tarot, we also have a bit of a hunchback, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. She sort of picked up on that.
Yeah,
and now you notice what she did here. You see the 6-pointed star is in the lantern?
Yes.
Now look at what the Anima Mundi is holding in this alchemical text. This is from the Hermetic Museum, which is one of the texts that Waite translated. So Pamela was probably familiar with this image.
Interesting. And you come up with this image of the snake biting itself.
Well, that's called the Auroboros.
Yeah.
Or Ouroboros, which is a symbol of time, and then that's the symbol of exaltation in the center, and then see the crow here, or the raven, means that he's now entering in, like there's the different color stages. So the first stage in alchemy is the black stage. So we've been entering into the black stage, but now it's getting really black. So now we have the symbol of the black stage, the Negretto. And see how the sky is getting darker. We have that. And that leads us to the pit of the Negretto eventually, which is the death and the devil. And then the white breaks in. And then from the white, we get the sun, which is the yellowing, the Saturnitas. So there's the Negretto, the Albedo, the Saturnitas, and finally the Rubetto, which is the reddening, which is when we discover the stone. So
this is the world card then?
Yeah, so the world card's the Rubetto.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we will manage to get there.
Well, I mean, it would take us so long to do this much, so we can stop.
I think this is totally enough, because people really should now follow up what you're saying, and I mean, you give such a thorough input here with for each card. We have lots of information now to take it from there. And
well, so I want you to notice this strange figure of the Anima Mundi, how she has 4 breasts. That's because the mother of the 4 elements.
Ah.
So that's why she has 4 breasts, so she can nurture the 4 elements. Now, see, that's it's like, totally, people looking like, why, what's going on here, but
so in the world card, the 4 elements are then awake in Waite's image because she has fed them.
Yeah, she's the quinta essentia. That's like in English we say the quintessence of something.
Yeah.
But that's just a short form of the alchemical term, which is the quinta essentia, which means the essential 5th element that nurtures the other 4.
Yeah, interesting.
Without the soul, there wouldn't be the 4 elements. They would just be dead matter.
Yeah. So basically, the Hermit is a stage where everything is ready to go into Negretto, and then around the sun, the star is beginning of Albedo.
Yeah, the Albedo or Albedo would come in. Well, it sort of breaks in with the tower when the white lightning breaks through the black, and then the star is the real, full cleansing of the black, and then we have the moon represents the white stone, which is the culmination of the Albedo.
Okay. Well, I will remove the screen now so we can see each other, or the people can.
Okay.
Are there any questions out there? Are there any questions out there, or have you been overwhelmed with information by Robert?
I know we got on some tangents, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely. And I think once when you go through these 2 talks with Robert, you can just see how brilliant his work is. It's really interesting the way you use old images from alchemy, but also from tarot, and bring them together in a new interpretation. I really, really like this a lot, and I am definitely going to get your decks. Just need to see how I ship them over.
Here, see, this is the deck, right?
Now,
see, it's in a cloth-covered box in 2 parts, and you see how the cards have gold edges. And see a nice. Here we go. Okay, can you see it there? Okay, so a nice matte finish.
Yeah, they're lovely. I really need them.
You see the back of the cards. Can you see that?
Wow, that's the back.
Yeah, that's the back. That's Lady Alchemia.
Wow.
She represents the Anima Mundi.
It's really lovely. Yeah. Marion says, you are a true polymath and I'm in awe. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
And I have to agree, Robert, thank you very much for spending so much time with us, especially after everything was so difficult.
Well, you know, I think we worked it out though, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. That's also alchemy, isn't it?
It's not, if it didn't take time, it wouldn't be worth it.
Exactly. So your day kind of starts yet. It's
Well,
2 o'clock.
it's 3. Yeah, it's 3 o'clock, and I'm going to go to the post office and mail out a bunch of decks. So.
Okay. Well, I hope at one point you can mail one to me. First, I have to get people to buy it as well.
But, but you know, we could put them in a box. Like if we let me look at this a second. Okay, if we've got a medium box, it costs $82 of shipping to go to Germany. So if you got, like, we could fit 15 decks in there easily, 16 decks maybe.
In a huge bag. Okay, you will hear from me.
So that's it. Then you're dividing the shipping up by 16 people. So
I know it's
so
really.
Here, right. Yeah. I'll give you exact figure. Okay. 82
okay, Robert.
Divided by 16. Okay, so it only comes out to like $5 shipping per.
That's
$5.
So if we get 15 people, it's $5 shipping. That's okay.
Yeah, that's like less than in the United States,
Okay, so I will write this down and organize it. Good.
Okay, I think I'm frozen.
Yeah, you're frozen. I think it's a sign we need to.
Okay, so we would run. They're trying to get rid of us. Okay.
I think so too. Anyway, people appreciate lots what you did, and they will come back to see this video, and you will hear from us, dear Robert.
Okay.
So bye there. Have a great time, everybody. See you next Friday with something else. Bye.
Okay, goodbye.